Have you ever felt trapped in an endless routine where every day feels like a repeat of the last, and a sense of existential exhaustion starts to take over your mind? What if I told you that the root of that exhaustion isn't in what you do, but in how you see yourself? French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre may hold the answer you've been searching for. He teaches us that true suffering doesn't come from life itself, but from the constant internal conflict between who we are and who we believe we should be. The ego, with its expectations and social masks, keeps us imprisoned, while consciousness invites us into a transformative freedom. But what about you? Are you ready to break free from the chains of ego and find a path to inner peace? In this video, we're going to dive into Sartre's insights and explore how his teachings can help you reconnect with your true essence and live a life that's more authentic, purposeful, and free. Existential fatigue is a feeling that creeps in slowly, as if life were being played on an endless loop. Routine, with its predictable, never-ending tasks, can feel like an invisible prison that slowly drains your vital energy. Often, we find ourselves doing the same things every day, as if the ticking of the clock were the only sign that time is moving. And it's not just physical exhaustion that hits us, but a deeper mental and emotional weariness. A sense of discouragement sets in, and dissatisfaction becomes the norm. So how can we find meaning in the midst of such relentless repetition? The answer, though complex, lies in reflecting on the role of the ego in this cycle. We are often prisoners of the expectations we place on ourselves, or those imposed by society. The ego feeds off of routine, off of external achievements, and the validation we receive from others. But when those things fall short, when the job, the status, or the accomplishments no longer fulfill us, the existential crisis deepens. That emptiness forces us to ask who we truly are and what our purpose is. The sense that something is missing eats away at us. And it's in this moment that deep reflection on ego and consciousness becomes not just helpful, but essential. Sometimes what we need isn't an external change, but an internal shift. Real transformation begins with the awareness that we are more than the roles we play, more than the functions society assigns us. Accepting that life can be different, that hope and renewal are within reach, creates space for a new perspective. And maybe, just maybe, when we start looking inward, we'll realize that existential fatigue isn't the end, it's the starting point. The call to seek a deeper purpose, free from the prison of ego and meaningless repetition. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, had a fascinating view of consciousness and the self. For him, consciousness wasn't something fixed or static. It was constantly evolving. This self, that identity we believe we have, is in truth a construct of thought. In other words, our perception of who we are isn't pre-existing. It's a continuous creation of the mind. Sartre challenges us to ask, if the self isn't fixed, then who are we, really? This kind of reflection is essential for understanding the limitations and traps of the ego. When we begin to question our existence, we're forced to confront something profound. The idea that our identity is not an unchanging truth, but something fluid, something that adapts and evolves with circumstances. That idea can be liberating. It allows us to see that we are not prisoners of a rigid, predefined self. Consciousness, being fluid, offers the possibility of reinvention and transformation. We are not the choices we made in the past, nor the expectations others place upon us. On the contrary, we are what we choose to become in each new moment. However, the freedom to exist without the pressure of a fixed self comes with immense responsibility. Sartre believed that once we realize the self is a construction, we also realize that we have the power to rewrite our own story. And with that power comes the weight of knowing that we alone are responsible for our existence. This can spark an existential crisis, but it's also a powerful invitation to live authentically. And perhaps, in this deep reflection on who we are, we begin to see how our very perception of the self shapes our reality and our choices. clearing a path toward true freedom. The difference between consciousness and ego is fundamental to understanding how we relate to our identity and how we perceive ourselves in the world. Consciousness, according to thinkers like Sartre, is the part of us that observes, perceives, and experiences reality without being influenced by judgment or mental constructs. It is pure, unconditioned by external pressures. The ego, on the other hand, is a mental creation, an identity shaped by our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations. The ego tries to define us, to put us in boxes, while consciousness allows us to experience reality free from the constraints of judgment. When we're able to distinguish consciousness from ego, we start to realize that much of our frustration and existential exhaustion comes from clinging to this constructed identity. The ego seeks security, recognition, and validation, while consciousness is only concerned with fully experiencing the present moment. The ego pushes us into a constant chase for external goals and social approval, leaving us perpetually unsatisfied because nothing ever feels like enough to make us feel whole. Consciousness, by contrast, invites us to embrace who we are without needing the approval of others or the fulfillment of external expectations. A simple way to understand this in practice is to look at the difference between doing something because you want to versus doing it because you feel you have to in order to please others. When we act from ego, our choices are driven by superficial desires like social acceptance or external validation. But when we act from consciousness, our motivation is internal, genuine, and aligned with our deeper purpose. That difference can be the turning point from a life guided by ego-driven pressure to one grounded in inner peace. And it's at that point that true freedom begins to emerge, a new way of dealing with existential fatigue, rooted not in who the world expects us to be, but in the quiet truth of who we already are. Society, with its values, rules, and expectations, wields immense power over how we see ourselves and how we position ourselves in the world. From a young age, we're taught to adopt certain social roles, to fulfill functions expected of us, whether in work, family, or social life. More often than not, we end up wearing masks to fit in, to be accepted. But those masks can distort us, pulling us further away from our true essence. What's left is a deep sense of discomfort, as the ego begins to live according to external expectations rather than our inner truth. Imagine waking up in a body that doesn't feel like your own, realizing that somehow you're no longer who you thought you were, yet you're still expected to act as if nothing's changed. That's exactly what happens to Gregor Samsa in The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Upon transforming into an insect, he not only loses his human form, but he's also met with indifference and rejection from the world around him. The true pain lies not just in the physical transformation, but in the emotional alienation, the isolation of being seen as an object without value. That experience mirrors what many of us live through every day. We're forced to wear masks, to hide our true selves just to fit the mold society has prepared for us. And over time, we forget who we really are, sinking deeper into a quiet kind of desolation, as if we were slowly dying inside, powerless to stop it. In this context, mental health suffers tremendously. The pressure of trying to be someone we're not leads to a profound sense of emptiness and alienation. The constant effort to maintain appearances and fulfill social roles drains our energy and disconnects us from our core. But if we can begin to recognize these masks, to question them, and reflect deeply on how they shape our identity, we can begin to break free. The freedom to be who we truly are, without the weight of societal expectations, is the first step toward achieving a lasting, authentic sense of well-being. It's not easy, but it's possible. And it begins with the courage to look within and ask, who am I beyond the roles I've been given? Sartre reminds us that true self-love is not tied to the ego, but to our ability to live the present moment with authenticity. Too often, we search for self-love in the wrong places, believing it lies in external achievements or in the validation of others. But genuine love for oneself arises when we can detach from what others think and simply exist, accepting our essence. It's in the present, right here, right now, that we discover true freedom and inner peace. When we stop living according to outside expectations, we can finally feel our own existence without fear, without judgment. Instead of chasing some idealized version of who we should be, self-love reveals itself when we accept our imperfections. Imagine, for example, a simple moment like walking through nature. If you are fully present, free from worries about the future or regrets about the past, you may realize just how full and meaningful that moment is. Self-love doesn't require drastic changes or external achievements. It requires an inner shift, the capacity to simply be. And when you surrender to that experience, you realize that life doesn't need justification or validation, because who you are is already enough. This reflection is transformative because it leads us to a lighter, more honest way of living. When we free ourselves from societal pressure and stop seeking approval, we begin to experience the true freedom of being. The ego, which always craves more, dissolves, and consciousness expands, allowing us to live in harmony with the present. By loving ourselves, not for what we do or achieve, but simply for existing, we can redefine our relationship with life and finally discover peace. Throughout our journey, we come to the realization that the true key to peace and fulfillment lies in learning to love life, but first and foremost, in learning to love ourselves. Not the kind of love that's tied to achievements or the image we project to the world, but love for our purest essence, the part of us that exists beyond social expectations and the masks we wear to please others. This kind of love is genuine and free of judgment, a love that demands nothing, yet transforms everything. When we begin to live authentically, free from the pressures of the ego, we uncover true freedom. Sartre taught us that our existence is not defined by what others think or by the expectations society places on us, but by our capacity to reinvent ourselves at every moment. Loving life is, in essence, an act of courage. It means breaking free from the grip of ego, embracing our imperfections, and living the present with awareness and acceptance. When we release ourselves from the traps of ego and social conventions, we begin to see the world with renewed clarity. Life, in all its simplicity and beauty, reveals itself as a profound and meaningful experience. In this light, the true philosophy of life isn't about having more, but about being more present, more authentic, more in tune with what truly matters. True happiness doesn't come from achieving some ideal of perfection, but from embracing and loving our humanity, with all its ups and downs. The path to real peace begins within us, and it is there in the quiet acceptance of who we truly are that we find the power to transform our reality, and, in doing so, the world around us. Now that you've explored Sartre's profound lessons and recognized how consciousness and ego shape your life, it's time to take action. How can you apply these insights to your daily routine? What changes are you willing to make to break free from the grip of ego and live more fully in the present moment? True transformation begins with small steps, like allowing yourself to be authentic without seeking external validation, choosing presence over perfection, truth over appearances. If you're ready to continue this journey of self-awareness and inner growth, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more insights like these. Don't let existential fatigue dictate your life. The power to be free is already in your hands. The next step is yours.